Coincidence or God? Some people would call this story a coincidence. I used to be one of them. This is the story of a language he'd need. A few years ago, I was serving on broadcast camera at Passion Conference. I noticed sign language interpreter signing for students. I walked over and asked, "Hey, do you all want to hear a really cool Jesus signing story?" They said yes. As I started, they kept signing, and I said, "Hey, you don't need to sign for me." They smiled and said, "It's just habit. Keep going." So I told them about one of my high school friends. Years ago, when he was registering for college classes, he saw a beautiful blonde girl across the room and thought, "Wow, that's my future wife." Then he noticed something. She was signing. So like any young man with a plan, he took sign language classes, hoping one day he could impress her. But those classes turned into much more than an elective. He changed his major and became a professional sign language interpreter. And then he went to work for a hearing impaired NBA player. Then the interpreters interrupted. "Wait, what about the girl? Does he get the girl?" And I said, "No." They said, "Well, this is the worst Jesus signing story we've ever heard." I replied, "I'm not finished." A few years later, my friend met the true love of his life. They got married, and not long after, they were blessed with a baby boy. Their son was born with cerebral palsy, and he was deaf. In that moment, the whole story changed. He wasn't just learning a language to impress a girl. God was preparing him to love, lead, and communicate with a son he had not even met yet. The interpreter started crying, and when I turned away, I noticed something totally unexpected. The entire section of students was crying too, because those interpreters had never stopped signing. I thought I was telling a story to a few people, but God had it reaching more people than I knew. In fact, 6 months later, my friend called from an international sign language convention in San Diego. Somehow, his story had traveled around the world and was being shared on stage. Looking back now, I believe something much bigger was going on. God sees the Son before the Father ever meets him. He sees our purpose before we understand the preparation. So what do you think? Coincidence or God? You can decide for yourself. But I tell you what I believe. God is in the details. There are more stories like this in my book, Control Freak, The Least Valuable Player. Click below to get your copy and follow for the next story that made me ask, coincidence or God?